Two guys of Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Part of his overall growth has been understanding schemes better and concepts, on and off the ball. Thought he was really good in the low man spot tonight. Thought he was really good on the ball when you had him there too. And flying around contesting for the most part.
Seems like he's talking between free throws, literally everything right now. You've talked about how his leadership role has grown. Is that more important in the locker room or actually out on the court?
Well, it's at both places, but communicating on the floor in the heat of the battle is probably more important, yeah.
Finchy, I'm assuming he's talking about Anthony Edwards there, right? Being the leader of the Timberwolves. Kyle and I on Flagrant Howls have been talking about this all year, but the Vikings have been on such a roll. We've done so much Viking stuff on Mackey and Judd. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts. Judd, starting with you.
Mm-hmm.
The Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards as sort of the driver of the car here, the pilot of the plane, if you will. The last 3 games, by the way, since Cat went out, and this doesn't have to be a whole referendum on Cat quite yet because they've only played 10 games, and Gobert's been out for this stretch where they scored 150 points against the Bulls without either of the 7-footers that they're paying like $80 million to. Anthony Edwards' last 3 games as the playmaker, the guy he's basically in the old James Harden role. He's in the Luka role, right? Maybe not quite to that extent, but he's initiating a lot more offense. Right. Last 3 games, 28 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, shooting 46% overall, 47% from three-point range. Small sample size, but really interesting what's sort of happening. Ant, here's the keys. You be the one that drives it. D'Lo play off the ball a little bit. Smaller lineups with Naz Reid having some career games. It's just a very interesting time in Wolvesville here, Judd.
Yes, it is. In the late 70s when Reggie Jackson signed with the Yankees, he caused some stirs in the clubhouse when he said in a interview, "I am the straw that stirs the drink," because there were players who said, well, "Hold on a second, Thurman Munson's the guy who drives the ship here," and Reggie's like, "No, it's me." And so I think very much that that's a very appropriate statement when it comes to Ant, what you want from Ant, and really what's best for, in this case, the Timberwolves, which is if Ant is the straw that stirs the Wolves' drink. The thing about this is egos are going to be very much at play, but it is abundantly clear to me whenever Ant feels empowered to stir said drink, which is not when Cat is playing. Ant will defer, like he'll defer personality-wise, he will. So he is not an ego maniac who's like, move aside, Cat. But when he's given, to your point, the keys to the car, Anthony Edwards is fun to watch. I think he's fun to play with. I think that he is a guy that his teammates are drawn to as the central figure on this basketball team. And so am I surprised that the Timberwolves, with Cat out, and this is not to say, just to be abundantly clear here, because I think it's two different discussions. This is not to say that Karl-Anthony Towns is a bad player. This is not to say he is incredibly talented. I agree with all of that, okay? So like just the definitive statement of, well, the Timberwolves without Cat are a far superior team. Talent-wise, they might not be, but chemistry-wise, they definitely are a better team. And I think that if they didn't have a guy who could emerge sort of as the captain without Cat, I think it's more of a problem. But Anthony Edwards, when you watch him play, and this might sound cliched and stupid, but the joy that he plays with when he's having fun, I think his teammates are drawn to that. I think the fan base is. And Karl-Anthony Towns is a tremendous basketball player, but the issue is I feel like he is a drain on the energy of that team far too frequently. When Ant is playing well, and even when he's not, he doesn't feel like a drain. It's like what the cold will do to an old car battery, right? It drains it. When Cat's out there on the floor, slinking over, mad about calls, mad he didn't get his, I don't know what he's mad about, but it seems he's mad a lot. I don't think there's anything that lifts his teammates up. I think Ant does that. And also when Ant's empowered, I think he takes control as well. Does that mean he's going to be good every single night? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Does that mean that more often than not, though, he's going to be a positive force? Yes, it does. So in one sense, I don't think this is a real difficult discussion to have for us. If you're the Timberwolves, it's incredibly tricky when Cat comes back.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be tricky. That's the thing. That's what I'm so curious to see here. Is this has been you never root for someone to get hurt, but I think where the Wolves were, they were just, I mean, they had that 5-game winning streak with pretty much all hands on deck, and it culminated with that big win at Indiana against a good Pacers team. And you thought, oh, okay, this is what it's supposed to look and feel like. They've finally sort of found this thing. And then they fell asleep at the wheel against Charlotte. They got absolutely boat raced by the Warriors. And then it was the Washington game where Cat gets hurt. And I don't know. Who knows how that game plays out. But they blew a lead. They had a lead in the first half, if I remember right. So I guess what I'm saying is they did peak with Cat and Gobert 3 games before the injury to Cat, and then Rudy went down. But I think based on just how they spent the first 20 games, rightfully so, trying to figure out, okay, what does this thing look and feel like? What's the pecking order here? How do 2 7-footers play together in today's NBA? All these things. And it was just like this roller coaster ride from game to game and week to week. And the blessing in disguise here is, okay, Cat gets hurt. You hate to see it, but let's put one of these pieces off to the side for a second. You almost needed to start building the links. Let's try to find 2 and 3 man pairings that work really well together and kind of build it, almost like build the puzzle from scratch again. And now you're sort of finding that Anthony Edwards can be the driving force. You're finding that Anthony Edwards playing with Naz Reid and Jalen Noel is a force. Those guys are kind of everywhere. They can all shoot threes. They can all play with high energy. So I think finding little like 2 and 3 man links that work well together, and like D'Lo has his pairings and things that work. It's a blessing in disguise that this happened, because now you can move forward organically. Oh, okay, the Anthony Edwards thing is working very well with him as the initiator more often. We've already seen what a franchise looks like when you try to run it through Cat from a leadership and an on-court perspective. It has a glass ceiling. We don't know what the Anthony Edwards franchise can look like. It needs to play out. He's only 21 years old. But I feel like they've spent basically 15 years since Kevin Garnett was traded to the Celtics trying to figure out, okay, who's the driver of this car and how far can it go? And it started off with Kevin Love and then sort of Andrew Wiggins and then like right into Karl-Anthony Towns.
Right.
And in the case, and I brought this up with Kyle a couple times on Flagrant Houses last week, in the case of Love and Wiggins, you found out those guys are really talented, but if they're going to drive the car, so to speak, it's not anywhere near an NBA championship caliber team. It's just not. Those guys aren't. From a leadership perspective, I think Love has matured a lot more. Now he's more of a leader on this Cavs team. But like at the time he was in his prime with the Timberwolves and then the first few years with the Cavs, he just needed to be a talented, skilled player that took a backseat to a couple other bigger personalities, both on and off the court, right? But he had to go somewhere else to make that happen. And Andrew Wiggins, very, very much not the driver of a car, right? And that's what you needed him to be based on the capital that you gave up. You gave up Love in his prime to get Wiggins. And he had to go somewhere else to sort of be the right fit as the 3rd or 4th guy. And now he's flourishing. He's become a great 3-point shooter. He's efficient. He plays defense, all these things. So what I would like to avoid because I think this transition, the horses are out of the barn here. This thing operates better when Anthony Edwards is in that pilot seat, when he's the one initiating, getting other people looks, sucking the defenders into the lane. Just when he is the one that's orchestrating everything. I think D'Lo likes that too. D'Lo kind of said a couple weeks ago, "I'm not a point guard, really. I'm just a basketball player. I don't need to be initiating everything." Everyone's getting comfortable now with this. So can you somehow then, when you add Cat back in, can you do it in a way that still uses his strengths, 3-point shooting, for example, but doesn't require him to be booted off the island entirely in the summer, because I don't think you want to be. There's more value for him being like the second or third guy in line here than trading him for 50 cents on the dollar. That's what I am so curious to see.
Yeah, but you're asking him. I mean, you brought this up. Love had to be traded, and then he fit in with LeBron and the Cavs. Wiggy had to be traded, and then he fits in with Steph Curry and a team that's deep and a team in which he can sort of accept that role. And here's the thing: you're asking a question. Can this take place? And ideally, the obvious answer is yes, of course it can. Cat goes in the corner. I don't know. Cat shoots. Cat makes some
Chris
threes.
Finch literally said we're gonna park him in the corner to keep the spacing. But
think about what his role has been here and how he perceives himself and how he is told, you are the guy. We need you to lead. And think about how Ant goes back to often shrinking when Cat is back. Ant goes back. Everybody, when Cat comes back, unfortunately, it feels like everyone goes back into what their role was instead of what we would like it to be. And I don't know if you can get Cat to do that here. Now, if Cat goes elsewhere and now his role is changed and the perception has changed, I think he can do the things that you're talking about. But you're basically saying, can Karl-Anthony Towns put his ego in check enough after considering himself? I mean, how many times has the dude said, I'm the guy here. I lead. I hold guys.
It's not everything's on me. The weight's
everything's
on my shoulders.
On me. And we're always like, dude, no, you don't. Don't, just take care of yourself. I really think from a human chemistry standpoint, I think what you're asking is damn near impossible. Unfortunately, ideally it works. D'Lo fits in. Because guess what? I don't ever sense he wants to lead at all. I think he wants to come to work, punch the clock, score his points, not be asked to do too much. Like, don't make me a point guard. And I think
some nights he'll take over, some nights he might not. And he's been really good the last 3 weeks.
But he can be D'Lo at his best. Can be what we accused Kirk of being from 2018 to 21, which is I work here guy. He likes to be I work here guy, which actually on this team can work out fine. The one thing that I think we need to caution in our conversations about Ant, though, is this. He's 21. He's young. But keep in mind, and I'm going to draw the comparison to the conversation to what we talked about with Wiggins for a long time. Ant is now in his third year. So he is young as a person, but he's seen a lot now in this league. And like when you watch him on the floor now and with Cat out and you see him lead, I don't think of him as a 21-year-old kid. I think of him as a guy who's gone through some stuff, who's seen some stuff. And so it's not like, oh, this can't be Ant's team yet. Now at 19, absolutely it couldn't be. But this can be. I think we get too hung up on the chronological years of a person in sports, and we dismiss the years of experience. Unfortunately, I think what you're asking for, Phil, with Cat is an ideal world. Yes, that would be awesome. I don't think he can do it here because I think that the ego has gotten to a place now where he just sees himself. I mean, he still tries to hold Ant accountable. Who the hell is he to hold Ant accountable?
It is a weird vibe because it's like at some point, you when you're 19, you're 20 years old, you're just kind of wide-eyed and you're in the NBA for the first time. And Ant has even talked about literally trying to figure out his sleep patterns on back-to-backs, right? You're trying to figure out still what time to go to bed.
Yes.
And apparently Ricky Rubio sort of sat him down the first year and taught him a couple of those things about, hey man, it's important to go to bed early, and because you're 19 years old, you think you can just kind of get on 5 hours of sleep or whatever. But at a certain point, you do look around the room and you think to yourself, well, wait a second, what have any of these guys accomplished? Or you start to do that mental tally in your head. Like, okay, Cat, I appreciate you and you're a really good player, but what have you done in the league ultimately?
Correct.
Like, you're not a human if that thought doesn't go through your head without some pushback when he calls you out for eating Popeye's chicken. And maybe there was some validity to that, but at the same time, it's like, all right, your leadership can take us to a certain point, but it's been 8 years, and the Timberwolves have been to the playoffs twice in the Karl-Anthony Towns era, or 7 or 8 years, whatever it's been. Mm-hmm. And they've never made it past the first round. So unless you think that there's just like a Jokic level monster from a playing standpoint. I think he's got the skills to do it, but from an emotional intelligence standpoint, waiting to be unleashed later in life as a basketball player.
Right.
It's time for everybody involved, including Cat, to do what's best for his career. Do you think, even if he gets traded, is he going to get traded? This is why I don't want to trade him. I don't want to trade him because here's what's going to happen. If you trade him, I've kind of gone 180 on this. If you trade him, you're going to get value. Like, you're going to get at least a couple first round picks because he's still a unicorn player and he's the best big man shooter of all time. But you're going to get 50 or 75 cents on the dollar. You don't know. Then you're going to fit some new pieces in, and that's always a gamble. And on his side, he's not going to be the best player on a team that goes to the Western Conference Championship, like the leader of a team. He would have to slot in with, like, I'm just throwing stuff out there. He'd have to slot in next to a Ja or next to a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, it's not going to be like Karl-Anthony Towns is carrying his new team to the Western Conference Finals. I think that ship has sailed, just like it did for Kevin Love, just like it did for Andrew Wiggins. So can everyone acknowledge the reality and the truth and the elephant in the room as adults and say, you can still have a hell of a career and make a lot of money and get a lot of shoe deals if you just ride the wave of Anthony Edwards and support Anthony Edwards and play off of Anthony Edwards?
I don't think he could do that here. I really don't. I think the ship has sailed. The pride is too strong. And so to go back to the trading him question too. So ideally, with the talent that the man possesses, yes, you want that talent on your team, provided he can accept his role. But let's go back to when there have been key games and he melts down and he's a negative drag on the entire franchise.
He derailed the Memphis playoff series.
Don't forget how you felt, Phil, after that. I think it was a home game when you were basically like, I'm done with this. I'm just done. Don't forget how you felt, because you know what? Regular season wise, the man can be unbelievable. And yes, I get all of the positives, but don't forget that feeling. Don't forget how we thought that the Rockets playoff series, in which Cat got clowned by TNT, by Barkley and Kenny and Shaq, which we thought that would be a step for him to graduate to an emotional intelligence point where he wouldn't have that. Yet against Memphis, he did. Against, and this is where it gets dicey to me, against the Clippers in the play-in game, he did. I mean, D'Lo had to emerge in that game. Like that was a game where I think D'Lo came in, punched in. It's like, oh, holy cow, I'm going to have to carry this team. And he did a great job in that game. But those are the things, like when we get to those key games, that's the thing with who Cat thinks he is. But then in the most important games and series, he emotionally drags the team down and he drags himself down. And the frustrating thing is, you don't watch that and say, boy, so close with Cat right there. That was so close. You watch it and you say, hey, dummy, this is the problem. You're the problem. You are yelling at officials. You are pouting. You are slumping your shoulders. Your body language stinks, which, by the way, in sports is incredibly important. Look at Kirk in 2020, oh man. And now, oh yeah, let's go. And so that's where, fundamentally, I'm with you. You know what? It would work. It would all work out. It would work out perfect. And I agree with you and Patrick. You're not going to get the return for Cat that you would like, because teams are going to know that you want to get him off your roster potentially. But all of that being said, I guess my question is this: Anthony Edwards is clearly the key to this team. He is not just a talent, but he is an emotional storm. He's an emotional storm, positive, which can be a captain, which can carry this team. And I guess my question is, with Karl-Anthony Towns here, is that going to be consistently unlocked, where he gets the keys to the car? And I think the answer is no, unfortunately. And that makes this a far more intricate discussion than can you just get Cat to take 3 steps back?
Well, it's up to, at this point, it's sort of up to Finch, and Finch has started to plant the seeds and say, well, we have found something. We found something in the spacing. We have found something in in Ant being comfortable as the driver, which he wasn't in his first and second year as much. He said he likes to play off the ball. Someone else get me the ball and I'll go score. I think he's seeing. I mean, look how much fun he's been having in these last few games too, and the whole triple double thing where he throws the ball at Finch, which I don't know if Finch loved that, but he's kind of unlocked a new level of his own joy through this process too, and so it's going to be up to Ant to. If he's not getting the ball for certain stretches when everyone comes back, or if he's like put in the corner, it's going to be up to him to be vocal too. Like there's going to be some jockeying for position and chemistry here. And I think they just can't lose sight of the guy that has the highest upside and the guy that gives the team the highest upside. And I can already hear people like, well, you guys are Karl-Anthony Towns has been the best player on this team. You know, you're ignoring the 3 or 4 games in the playoffs where he did go off for 29 and 13 or 33 and 14, to which I say that is the expectation for him. So you can't just say, well, what about the 2 games where he went for 33 and 28 or 29? Like he had 3 really good games in that Memphis series. Yes, that's unfortunately, you don't get like a cookie after doing your job as a star player in the playoffs. Yep. You get criticized, rightfully so, when you melt down in the other 3 games and you lose a 6-game series. Exactly. So, and he's kind of pulled that disappearing act now in 2 different playoff series. And the reason I felt the way that I did after Game 3 is because it feels unfixable. It feels like there's a certain level of NBA play where you get to late in the season or playoffs, and he just sort of short circuits mentally because he can't handle it. And then he'll come back and lock it in for a game, but then he short circuits again. I don't think Ant short circuits mentally like that. So if you can't handle the mental load of playing in the first round of the playoffs without fouling out or freaking out at officials or, derailing your team in the second half, then you need to take a back seat. And I'll just say, just to hammer the point home, I hope that he finds that back seat with the Timberwolves. But
that's
it'll be
where
an
I'm
interesting 6 months.
That's where I'm at too with Cat. And I know we haven't opened up this can of worms in this discussion, but to me, after watching 18, 20 games with Gobert, 6 now or whatever it's been, 5 or 6 without him, Gobert is one of the most limited offensive players in the NBA. Like, I hate playing revisionist history. That's going to be a bad trade. That's going to be a bad trade for the Wolves. I don't think it's a franchise crippling trade, but I think we can grade it. It's probably going to wind up being a bad trade. And I would love to see how Cat fits into this team because he's just a unicorn offensive player. And conversely, obviously, Gobert is so good defensively, and that's great. But Gobert's limitations on offense, I just don't know how, if Cat is going to be parked in the corner, and Gobert, I guess, is down in the paint just being limited. On paper, that sounds great. I just don't know how all this coexists with Ant still taking over games, D'Lo getting his thing. Once these 2 come back, I don't know then how it works again. That's where I'm at. I'm back to square one.
It works. Exactly. I don't think they have to figure it out.
Well,
yeah.
I think that's why I think Finch floated that in the press conference about parking Cat in the corner on purpose. And I guarantee there was a discussion the next day, if not sooner, where Karl's like, whoa, what are we talking about here? The issue with Karl at the start of the season, as they tried to get this all to work, is you are only a successful unicorn player if you can unleash the different parts of your game. And Cat struggles with that. Like, you could tell Cat was out of sorts. Like, he's got to, that's the thing is, dude, if you're going to be the captain of this team and things change, you got to take that ball and run with it. Like, you got to put up shots from outside. You got to do this. You've got to do that. And I think where Finch's frustration and the comment about sticking him in the corner lies is this. I think Finch is saying, I got to give him an exact role. Because think about how Cat didn't, and to me, that's not an adapting thing, okay? Think about how Cat didn't take that opportunity where it's like, Cat, you can basically freelance. Ant can do that. Cat looked very confused by it. He looked like a guy who didn't know his role. And again, when you're watching him, what happens then? He sort of slinks around. Woe is me. The world's against me. What am I supposed to do here? And those are the type of things that in sports and professional sports doesn't really work. people don't respect that. Your
Yeah, does
teammates
he
don't
have
respect
does
it.
he have the maturity and the vision to be the conductor of this whole thing, to be the guy that sees, okay, this is how these pieces all fit together.
Right.
This is how, like, because
Exactly.
it can't just be Finch and Tim Connolly's vision. How does all this stuff fit together? Players on the court have to have the vision too and execute it. And I don't know if a 21-year-old Anthony Edwards is going to fully see the whole matrix like he will in 5 years, or like some other players do who are older and have been around. But I don't think that Cat does. I don't think
No.
Cat's going to be the one that, hey guys, I have been sitting out with my calf injury and I have figured out how all of this is going to be glued together. Follow my lead. I think you're right. He probably needs to be told more, hey, here are the things we need you to do.
Right.
Yeah. This is going to be so fascinating. By the way, the corner threes thing, before we're going to get to write that down, predictions here in a minute. So he was actually excellent at corner threes for a 4-year stretch early in his career. He was shooting 44, 57, 42, and 43% corner threes.
Wow.
The last 3 years, he's taken fewer corner threes, and he's shooting 28, 34, and this year 25% on corner threes. But they may need him to launch more corner threes if what Finch's words, not ours. We may have to park him in the corner to keep our spacing and let Anthony Edwards and some of these other playmakers do their thing. So, either way, I am shockingly, I know, optimistic about what they've done here lately, figuring out some of these. And they also have now, it's like Jalen Noel is figuring it out, and Naz Reid is having some career games, and those guys are up for free agency.
Yeah.
D'Lo's up for free agency, and he's got an expiring contract that's $30 million that could be valuable. So they actually, whether they're winning or losing at the deadline, they've got decisions to make on just asset management. What do they want to do with some of these guys if they can't fit everyone under the same roof? Different conversation for another day. If you're looking to help your business, maybe there's some choppy waters that you're trying to navigate going forward, like there always are as a business owner. Federated Insurance, official partner of the Minnesota Timberwolves, has been helping businesses since 1904. They're based in Owatonna, Minnesota. They are one of us, so to speak, and they provide an excellent guiding hand to help you maximize your business through risk management tools and resources. Federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. All right, gentlemen, we're going to make some predictions and hold each other accountable here coming up on Mackie and Judd.